Hi, I'm Keap, and on the Conquer the Chaos podcast, I talk with inspiring business owners about what it takes to build a great business and a great life. That means more money, more time, more control, more impact, more freedom. So keep listening to hear the tough lessons they learned so you don't have to repeat them. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Conquer the Chaos podcast. I'm Keap, co-host of the podcast and co-founder and CEO of Keap. And I'm looking forward to our conversation today because we're going to talk with someone who really understands the personal development side of entrepreneurship. Someone who has gone deep in this. And as you know, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I write a lot about it in Conquer the Chaos. I speak about it. To me, the personal development aspect of entrepreneurship is one of the things that I love most about entrepreneurship. And our guest today is David Bayer, who is an expert, an authority. He's a teacher at heart, I believe, and he has really created an amazing podcast that's just built an incredible following because of the way that he teaches how you grow yourself and grow your business as a result of that. And so we're going to talk today about personal development for entrepreneurs. And David, thank you for coming and being with us to share your expertise.
Clay, it's a pleasure. I'm really excited to be here with you today and having the conversation with everybody else who's listening.
Well, thank you. You know, we've been at your events for years. We've sponsored your events at times. We've spoken at events, and you and I haven't had a chance to have a sit-down conversation. But I've seen what you teach, and there's a lot of parallels between what's in the personal keys to success in Conquer the Chaos, and certainly, as anybody who's listened to me over time knows, that I'm just a junkie for personal development. I love it, and I love what you teach. And so I'm excited for you to take us deeper into what really lies at the heart of success for entrepreneurs in terms of mindset, in terms of analysis, and really evaluating our situations so that we can evolve and improve. So maybe take just a second and give our audience a little more about what your specialty is, what you believe has caused the quick rise of your podcast to have over 1 million monthly listeners, and really to just have a great audience that follows what you do. To what do you attribute that? What is your expertise?
I think it's three things. One is the integration of a lot of different paths a lot of different people are taking in order to eliminate their personal suffering and achieve their goals. So some people are coming through neuroscience, some people are coming through behavioral psychology, metaphysics, vibrational or field theory, spiritual teachings, religion, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. And so all of those pieces are pieces that I've incorporated into my understanding of how it all works. And so we're able to meet people where they're at in the way that we're teaching. I think number two is I'm a frameworks fanatic, and I also have a capacity to take large data sets or big pictures and distill them down into something that your 7-year-old can understand. And then I think the third piece is just authenticity. Like, I've lived it, so I think people feel that. When I'm talking about overcoming the different challenges in my life and the application of wisdom teachings to navigate and transform those experiences, it's not philosophical for the most part. So those three things I think allow the message to really resonate with people. And then the fourth is we're very focused on the entrepreneurial experience because our ego, our traumas, our limiting beliefs are materializing in specific ways in the vehicle of business. And so, so many people come into our world because they want to grow their business, but what they experience is the healing that's required in order for their business to actually grow.
I love it. So true. I've said so many times that running a business is a lab for personal development if you let it be that. And you really get to a point where you can't grow your business more if you're not growing yourself. The business, it can't outgrow the entrepreneur. And so if you I love that last statement you made, because there's so many people out there who are listening who are like, yeah, I want to grow my business. But in order to do that, they've got to confront some things that are in the mirror. I coached for 15 years with a coach who really helped me to overcome certain things and face some of the demons that we all face. It's just part of what we deal with as entrepreneurs. But if we don't face them, then our businesses struggle, our relationships struggle. We don't achieve the goals and the joy that we want as we kind of get caught up in some of the suffering of life. So let me see if I can kind of recap what you said. You said, well, listen, everybody's trying to get out of suffering and achieve their goals, but you bring together the convergence of many different disciplines and approaches to how to do that, along with a skill set for looking at the data and simplifying it down, and then the authenticity of doing this as an entrepreneur and experiencing it. And so when you apply all of that to the entrepreneur's challenges that we face, you get a very resonant message for entrepreneurs who are wanting to get out of the suffering and get the growth going.
100%. And I think there's two core pieces that came up for me as you were speaking. One is really understanding and accepting at a very deep, almost honestly raw level that you create your own reality. And so there's a piece of the conversation there, and it goes deeper than this idea of if you're grateful for things, you'll attract more things into your life, and if you're focused on complaining, you're going to experience more problems. So, but that's one baseline piece, is that you're creating your own reality. And then the other is the simplification of the journey of our life into one equation, which I've been teaching a lot recently. And the equation is desire plus non-resistance equals desired results. And so
desire plus non-resistance
equals desired results. So we're, just as fish are born to swim and birds are born to fly, human beings are born to create. We have the capacity to take an idea which exists in nothingness and make it material. We're materializers. No other species does that. And we materialize through the mechanism of desire. And if we do not have a resistance to a desired outcome, be it finding your soulmate, growing your business, becoming president of the United States, healing your autoimmune condition, whatever it is, if you don't have resistance to the desire 100% of the time through the mechanism of the human being, and we can dive into it if you want, we will produce the desired result. But the equation that we've been given and the conclusions we've come to an observation of how we think other people achieve success is desire plus hustle and grind equals desired result. Desire plus have enough money equals desired result. Desire plus have enough time or not have my day job equals desired result. And so we set up all of these restrictions or limitations within the natural process of creating. And so when we're working with entrepreneurs, we're saying, what do you want? That's the first question. Sometimes people have a hard time answering that question. But even when they do, we're not now looking at how to achieve that result. We're looking at what resistance someone has to that result, because if we move the resistance, the result is the natural byproduct of non-resistance.
So let's dig into this a little deeper. If desire plus non-resistance equals desired results, and the non-resistance that you're calling out, or the resistance that you're calling out, yes, is it looks like what we think other people have done.
It's it's belief systems, it's rules about how things must work or can't work.
Okay, so tell us more about that. What does that resistance look like in an everyday experiences that you're having with entrepreneurs? Because we've got people who are sitting out there and they're like, look, I know what I want, and I am driving at that. I'm trying to make that happen, and it's not happening.
Sure.
You would tell them, well, you've got some resistance in the way here.
Correct.
And what does that typically look like?
It looks like the reactions that they're having to the journey of trying to produce their outcomes that don't feel good. So if they're moving into a negative emotion, we call it a primal state of being. We say there's only two states of being: powerful states or primal states. Powerful states are states of being that feel good, and primal states are states of being that don't feel good. And what state of being you're in is determined by one thing and one thing only, which is your thinking. So that's what determines how you feel. And so what we want to look at are the thoughts you're having that are inducing you into a primal state. because that's where we find the resistance. Those are limiting beliefs. So I want to grow my business, but money's hard to make. I want to grow my business, but nobody would care about my message. I want to grow my business, but I'm never going to figure out this tech thing. I want to grow my business, but other people are already doing what it is that I want to do, and they're doing it at such a great level that why would anybody need me in the marketplace? That's
so all of those are examples of limiting beliefs that are a form of resistance.
Correct. And so we believe that if all of the focus is put on transforming the resistance, selecting the right strategy, executing on the strategy in a way that produces the desired result, automating your business, finding your soulmate, recovering your health, those are all the natural byproducts of non-resistance. So when there's a break in the matrix, the solution is not to try to figure out how to push the matrix harder. It's to try to figure out, well, what is the reaction I'm having right now that's moving me into a primal state, because that provides us an insight into the thought process, the belief systems, the unmetabolized trauma that is ready to be transformed. And when it becomes transformed, then the natural byproduct of that is the result that you want. And so it's very much like, a sculptor is sculpting a masterpiece. Unless, I guess, you're building a Mr. Potato Head, you're not like taking a head and then blocking on eyes and then blocking on ears and blocking on the mouth. What the master sculptor does is it takes a raw block of clay and it removes everything that doesn't belong. And so everybody is entitled to create their own version of a masterpiece life, but we've been focused on trying to achieve that with a bad set of rules.
Mm-hmm. So I love this, David. It resonates very, very loudly with me, because this is, I think this is the work of entrepreneurship inside of our minds every day, that is working on the limiting beliefs, replacing them with empowering beliefs, transforming those thoughts, those empowering thoughts into emotional, heartfelt thoughts. I'm a big, I say this all the time. I learned this years ago from my coach and who got me onto a book by Neville Goddard, that The Feeling is the Secret.
It's a great book.
When it turns from thought work into heart work, and it's driven by emotion, those are not just, now you don't have thoughts, you have powerful emotionally driven beliefs that, when you have those kinds of beliefs, the actions follow very naturally that lead to the outcomes that we want.
Yes.
And so when I hear you describing the limiting beliefs and removing the limiting beliefs and getting more empowering beliefs in place, to me that's the crux of the work right there. Mm-hmm. And I believe, what I learned and what I talk about a lot is there's in the rhythm of execution is actually the work of doing this every day as entrepreneurs. How do we go about doing this? And so, there's the morning mastery part that I talk about.
Practice is progress.
Yes. And doing that, setting up actual rhythms of how we do this, so that it's not work, it's not another thing, it just becomes part of what we do. I'm really fascinated to hear how you teach the crux of this work. How do you get people who are have habit thoughts that are limiting, to transform those into empowering thoughts that are emotionally driven, that become beliefs that result in the success and the desired results?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and you used an important word there, which is a habit, right? And so if practice is the progress, then the question is, what are we practicing here? And so we're stepping away for a moment from trying to push on personal growth and making sure that we're pushing on the right thing. What are we practicing? So what we're practicing is the downregulation of the nervous system. So the lens through which we're approaching this is that, hey, human beings are going through a speciation event. We're actually evolving. And it's not the traditional speciation event where the bird's beak is longer, or the thing drops its gills and it crawls on land. It's actually it's a materially undetectable, although you could probably measure it, evolution of the nervous system away from the natural sympathetic inclination, right? Because that's how we've survived for so long.
Yes,
into a parasympathetic expression, into more consistently operating from a powerful state. So this is really cool, because we're learning now.
And that's your primal versus powerful right there. The primal is that flight tendency, fight or flight, sympathetic. That's right. Yeah. Versus the powerful.
And so So now we understand. Okay, so now I'm focused on down regulating my nervous system. What is up regulating my nervous system? And it's really fascinating when you look at traditional Western medicine, because you could take all the major disease categories. They all have different things about them, but the one thing they have in common, even according to the CDC, is that they're stress related. So we've become, it's like the gear has become stuck. So we're now, I remember when I was on a date with my wife early on, and this was 10 years ago, and I had 2 homes in foreclosure, and I was still new to recovery. I was working my 12-step program in drug and alcohol and sex addiction, and I finally decided I would start dating again, and we go out on a date, and I'm broke. And, I'm just hoping she doesn't, order the most expensive thing on the menu. So, but we're not supposed to move into sympathetic looking at the menu at a restaurant. Like, that's not how the system is designed. Right. Or just because, my fake life as it scrolls through your news feed triggers you, right? So now we're working on down regulation, and we're saying, hey, the thing that's mostly up regulating us is our own mind. Sure, there's things like environmental toxins or other types of stressors, but it's our own mind. And so in the work that I had been doing in personal growth after I got out of 12-step recovery, I'm like, wow, this is really amazing. I'm rewiring my brain. I'm changing my habits. Like, is there other stuff out here about this? I went to a bookstore. I'm like, do you have books for people who want to change who they are? And the woman was like, the self-help section. And I was like, yeah, that sounds appropriate. And So I got into personal growth, and I was doing all the Tony Robbins stuff, and I read all the Eckhart Tolle books, and I had my membership card, but I felt like I just got stuck. And one of the big breakthroughs I had, it was an answer to an asking I had around how can I go deeper into shifting my beliefs, was an awareness that beliefs are decisions. And it seems like a 2-millimeter distinction, but it gave the changing of my beliefs accessibility. I had made a big deal out of my beliefs. I was aware of my limiting beliefs. And
your ego protects them. Your ego gets all infatuated with them and makes sure that everything stays intact, so that the ego isn't, allowing the self to get damaged.
Yes, and the reinforcement of your limiting beliefs is a natural function of neuropsychology and neuroscience. So when you believe something, that's all you're paying attention to. When you believe something, those are the only thoughts that you're really tuning into. And so those are the only thoughts that you're feeling, and those emotions are motivating action. And so that's the results that you're producing. So you it's described in psychocybernetics as a psycho-cybernetic loop. It's like, Henry Ford said, the man who thinks he can and the man who thinks he can't are both right. So if we personify the ego as an energy, it has an intention to continue its existence. And it's just how the system works, right? Yeah. So, and you're working with beliefs. Go ahead.
The point that beliefs are a decision.
Yeah.
That to me, and I love that. I've talked to people at times who are struggling with a religious question, and I've said, when you get right down to it, it's really just a choice. Because you can come up with all the evidence one way or the other, and it just comes down to a choice. And when you are, I love that you describe belief as a decision, because it's another way of saying belief is a choice. Right? Which you're choosing in that little 2% distinction, whether the man is right because he believes he can, or the man is wrong or is right because he believes he can't. They're both true. So which do you choose? That is a really powerful way to loosen up the ego-encrusted beliefs that we create, that we latch onto, that prevent us from moving forward.
We give. I mean, you're dropping so much. I'm trying to pick it up, because there's an opportunity to talk about God as a placebo effect, which I don't think it is, but there's a case for it, right? Whatever you believe, if you believe in a loving, benevolent universe and omnipotent, omniscient power, that's your experience. And I would love to see if we have time to unpack a little bit around God. But the other piece is, so this awareness I had that beliefs are decisions allowed me to give myself permission to start deciding some new things. And as I started deciding some new things, not to do things as much as about things, I started deciding about things, like about how money worked, about who I was, about how lovable I was, about how many good women were still out there, because I had been single for so long. 2 weeks before I met my wife, this is a to-do decision, but I made a decision that I was going to meet a beautiful Colombian woman and make her my wife, and now I'm married to a beautiful Colombian woman. And I looked online at that time. I was like, is anybody else talking about the power of decision? Not in a task-oriented, goal-oriented, what you decide, but how beliefs are decisions. And there was a guy in the 60s, a New Thought teacher named Raymond Charles Barker, and he wrote a book called The Power of Decision. I give it to all of my, it's the first book all of my one-year clients get. And he talked about how the moment you make a new decision, 3 or 4 really incredible things happen. Number one, all of a sudden the ideas that you have access to that actually reside in consciousness, not in your head, but all of the ideas that you start to tune into are in alignment with this new decision. So you abandon thoughts of money being hard to make, or money coming but not staying very long, for the world is awash in money. And you start to actually have thoughts and ideas that lead you to that result. Number two, he said it changes your perception of reality. And of course, back then he wasn't aware of the reticular activating system, but you buy a car, you see the car everywhere on the road. Right. So there's this bias based on what you believe, and that's what you're focusing on. The third thing, which now we're understanding, as behavioral psychology and neuroscience are integrating, is that, we have all these unconscious thoughts throughout the day. There's a moment where you become aware of the fact that you have to use the restroom and you go use the restroom. There's a certain number of blueberries that you put into your smoothie and you're not really thinking about it, but there is something determining the size of the scoop of the blueberries, and therefore when you actually need to go to Whole Foods to get the refill. And so your unconscious mind is coordinating tens of thousands of micro decisions on a weekly and monthly basis that are organizing this thing called the timing of your life. And so that then takes us to coincidences and synchronicities. So the unconscious decisions are being made across an intelligence matrix that is coordinating everything to lead you to rendezvous that are going to prove out what you believe to you again. And so, people talk about, like the law of attraction, and it sounds very vegan, but it's not a new age concept. You can back it all the way down into neuroscience. And I think a lot of people too in this conversation, where we say, hey, let's focus on identifying the resistance by looking at the negative reactions you're having to the experiences of your life. And if we remove the resistance, we'll produce the result. They think what we're saying is that you're not going to take action. That's not what we're saying. You'll look back and you will have become you will be a significant part of the manifestation. You'd go, I did this and I thought that and I called this person, I did all these things. But what we're saying is that's not just an effect of non-resistance. Yeah. So this is not a sit at home and hope the Amazon guy delivers a $10 million business to your front door, right?
Right. Okay, we're going to keep this going, but first a quick message for you. Conquer the Chaos listeners, let me talk to you straight for just a minute. You're running your business and it dominates your mind. It can be very difficult to take a step back and see what's needed to create balance in your business and your personal life, and to create great growth and development and progress in your business and personal life. One of the most powerful ways to gain the perspective that you need is to get away from things and immerse yourself in an environment where you're going to be inspired, where you can see possibilities, where you can create connections, and where you can learn and grow and develop. And I know of no better place for entrepreneurs than Keap's Let's Grow Summit. For years, we ran this conference as just an amazing mecca for entrepreneurship. And then truth be told, for a few years, we didn't run it. We got back to it last year, and this year we're putting it on, and it is going to be awesome. I am so excited about this, and I want you as our listeners to not miss out on this event. It's going to be November 20th through the 22nd, downtown Phoenix, with the main days being the 21st and the 22nd. You can register for it by going to keap.com/letsgrowsummit. That's keap.com/letsgrowsummit. And you can take advantage of our early bird registration pricing, which expires the end of July. So if you are needing a reflection time, an opportunity to take a step back, gain greater perspective, inspiration, and most of all, see what automation, the fifth key to success, can do for your business, then make sure that you attend the Let's Grow Summit. Keap.com/letsgrowsummit, November 20th through 22nd in Phoenix. I look forward to seeing you there. All right, now back to our chat. you just touched on so many things. I want to try to get down to the root of this non-resistance, because I do believe that your point about beliefs, or I think when we recognize that beliefs are a decision, it loosens up things. It makes possible so many things. And my observation in myself and in other entrepreneurs is a lot of times the resistance can also be described as a rigidity to a certain belief. We're holding on to this belief, where if we can just loosen it up a little bit and get ourselves to, maybe it's possible. Might it be possible? And so what I talk all the time about, just practice a very simple turnaround on our thoughts to loosen up the thoughts. And I describe the ABC method, but it really is as simply as, well, you've got a certain belief. How's it working out for you? How's that working for you when you hold on to that belief? And this, by the way, I see it in relationships. I see it in work settings. I see it all the time, where we're holding on to beliefs with a rigidity or a certain resistance that, if we can loosen it up, it changes everything for us. So when you help people to loosen that up, one method you're talking about is, well, just give yourself the permission, the space to see that your belief really is just a choice. It's a decision that you're holding on to.
That's the deadbolt on the door, and then we have to unlock it. So we have a process called the decision matrix, where we say, look, if one of the things that we believe is that you're always operating in one of two states of being, and you're never in two states of being at the same time. And this is neurologically evident in the sympathetic and parasympathetic expression of the nervous system. You're not angry and peaceful at the same time. And so the only thing that's causing you to move into a primal state is the thinking. And one of the things that we found, which is a rabbit trail, is 100% of the time that you're thinking something that's moving you into a primal state, it's not true. So it's what's happening is an electrical dissonance in your nervous system that's not resonant with the energetic vibration of the whole of reality. And so this is where
take us through that again, because that was good.
So we're living within and as an intelligent superorganism. Some people call it God, the universe, the quantum field, and it has a frequency, and the baseline frequency of it is love. So a way of articulating that is, life is always working for our greatest growth, our greatest prosperity, and our greatest evolution, even through the sexual abuse, even through the Holocausts, even through all of the things that we would say we never wish upon anyone. It is part of an intelligent structure of civilizing and evolving humanity. So we have to experience things that we don't like in order to build systems that include the opposite and don't include them. So there's this frequency. The Hindus articulated it with the Om vibration. Some people might call it the Holy Spirit, or the quantum field. And so when we
getting in touch with the inner self, there's lots of ways that people describe it, and it's like you've got this.
So when you move into a primal state, it's because of your own thinking. It's not because of the external circumstance. And the reason why it feels uncomfortable is because you've activated an electrical energy inside of you at the frequency of that thought, which gets translated through the nervous system, right? This is all electrical phenomenon that is a dissonant vibration to the resonance of reality. You've disconnected from reality. And you experience that disconnection as some form of negative emotion: anger, jealousy, boredom, anxiety, depression. And so what we're trying to do is use that material and bridge back to reality. That's what the transformation of a limiting belief is.
Yeah.
That's why when you're in the limiting belief, you feel like shit. And when you transform the limiting belief, you're in a powerful state.
Yeah, right. So the deadbolt on the door is you loosen up the belief to recognize it's a choice or a decision.
Right.
And then you go down the path of, where am I feeling negative energy? Where am I feeling this something that's not a positive thing that I want? Identify what that is and recognize it's not true. If you're actually having that negative thing, it's not a true power empowering thing.
Yes.
And you're holding on to it as though it is true.
Yes. Now we have to see that it's not true. So we can know that it's not true, especially when you live in this work long enough. You're like, I've moved into a primal state. This is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I know it's not true, but it may still seem very true. And so it's a very simple process where like literally a listener could pull out a piece of paper right now. And on the left-hand side, you write down the limiting belief. There's 3 columns. Left column is the limiting belief. Middle column is, if that's not true, then some form of the opposite must be true.
Yeah.
And you write down whatever the opposite is. And then in the third column, we say, what evidence do I have for the fact that what I wrote in the second column is true?
Oh, that's so good.
And
Yeah.
And the beauty of this is if you're willing to be patient with it, you actually start sourcing examples from your own life.
Yeah.
And so that's very different than Coach Clayt or Coach David trying to convince someone that the new belief is true.
No, you're sourcing it from your own life. You're convincing yourself.
Once you source that from your own life, I think that's the fastest way to actually transform a belief system, is for you, based on the information of your own life, to see that what you were thinking was untrue.
Yeah, I love that so much, David. I've said many times that the job of turning around the thought really is just about getting our rational mind to see it and hold it as true. Because our rational mind, once the rational mind says, yes, that's true, away we go.
It's still a habit. It's still a habit. You might have to remind yourself, right? That's the practice that you're talking about.
Sure. Yep. But you've convinced yourself at that point, and
Correct.
so you don't have to, now it's not somebody else telling you, because when other people are telling us, we actually just get more rigid. We dig in deeper. We come up with all kinds of evidence to support our belief that is untrue, that is causing us, frustration in our lives. And I love the third column that you just called out, because that is actually a practice to help you see in yourself or in your own life and in your own examples, how it might not be true, this thing that you're holding on to.
Yes. And so that, I thought in the beginning, was all the work to do, until I kept suffering. And so over time, we identified 4 layers of resistance. One is limiting beliefs. The second, and this is all, I loved your languaging, this is all about loosening it up. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to create space. It's almost as if the fascias, you got scar tissue, emotional scar tissue, right?
Right.
So the system's not moving, your business is not moving, your bank account's not moving, your spirit's not moving. And so what we're doing is we're loosening that up. And so the second layer of resistance, there were some limiting beliefs that people had that no matter how many decision matrix they worked, it was like it just seemed to be a more well-worn neurological phenomenon. And so it was like, how do we break this? And what we found after several years was that those people were still holding resentments for individuals or circumstances that represented the belief to them. And so you cannot get rid of a limiting belief if you're still holding on through the mechanism of resentment, the person or experience that represented that limiting belief for you in your life. And it's not just the original one, but it's a whole chain of repetition, right?
That is beautiful. Because that resentment cements the limiting beliefs. It's that it provides so much emotional evidence that you can't get past it if you don't. You can do all the work on the limiting beliefs, but the resentment's holding it on, which is why forgiveness and gratitude become so powerful in that process.
And again, what do we do? We use a framework to help people source. Obviously, we support through distinctions. A lot of people in our community are, they love the work that we're doing because they're learning more about how life works.
Yeah.
From a metaphysical standpoint, like the work of Neville Goddard and so many others. But we're giving them a framework to actually view that experience intelligently, meaning with intelligence, or meaning through the lens by which the God of your own understanding understands that experience. And then what happens is people don't even have to try to forgive. People end up feeling badly about the resentment in a sense, which we then help them with, because they're like, wow, like this experience that I had helped me become who I am today. That person who harmed me didn't have the tools or the information I have access to today in order to alleviate myself of this trauma. My parents were trauma holders. And then you can get into a very spiritual conversation around how you chose to be born to those people in order to become the person that you're destined to become. And then everything starts to make sense. And I think, again, going back to the first point, that's why in order to feel complete in this personal growth exercise, it requires the integration of all of these different pieces, because neuroscience can't prove that you chose
Right.
who you were going to be born to, right?
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. And I can see, as I can see the weaving in of everything from neuroscience and spirituality and psycho-cybernetics, and there's so many different pieces that you bring into your method. You talked about the 4 layers of this. The first is limiting beliefs. The second is resentment. What are the third and fourth?
the third is called the core program. So every individual has a core program. The core program is an original wound. It is the marriage of your parents' core programs. So, for an example, my dad was critically minded. He was an attorney. My experience of that was that there was something wrong with me and I wasn't good enough. My mom was a chronic worrier because she never felt good enough, and that's who I adopted that from. So my core program has these components like there's something wrong with me, worry, rumination. But it also is, it's really just, the core program is the dissonant form of my gift. My gift is the resonant form. So I'm a deep thinker, I'm critical, I'm loving, I'm self-conscious. And a lot of the coping mechanisms that we develop into our personality at a very early age have behind them the core program. So, I was academically superior, I wanted to be successful, but a lot of that had frequencies or motivation within it that were dissonant.
Yeah.
And so what we find is that between the ages of 35 and 55, that has built up such a neurological momentum within the personality, and it begins to overreach its application. And that's why many people feel like the same skill sets that got them to where they are in the process of suffocating them. And so you've seen this.
As a 52-year-old man, I relate.
and so this isn't one that you framework out. I mean, I found a way to framework it, but the core program and the transformation of it unlocks the bridge to your full potential. And the process of transforming the core program is the process of surrender. So it calls you back into a relationship with the God of your own understanding. And I discovered this working the 12-step programs because the core program is an addiction. So everybody has an addiction. It
makes sense, yeah.
And so just as we say in the first 3 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, basically, I can't, he can, I'll let him, which is the process of recognizing my life has become unmanageable. There's an insanity taking place. I'm powerless to change it. Not that you're powerless in your life, but you have not been able to fix this thing.
The core program's running.
The core program, and so it surrenders people, and the only way out of that bottom, and a lot of people don't get out of the bottom. They get out of the bottom through drugs or alcohol or broken relationships or divorce or whatever it is, but is actually a return to God. And again, this is not a religious God, but this idea that there's something outside of us that can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves, and it always has, and it will if we allow it. And now we're progressing down that timeline of loosening that you so intuitively spoke into, because this process that we're actually going through is a surrendering of our full selves to a power greater than ourselves. And that is the only way that we can achieve our full potential, is when we're no longer doing anything for ourselves, and we no longer take credit for anything we've accomplished, and we no longer take credit for anything that doesn't go the way we expected it to, which is what we would traditionally call a failure, but we're doing everything in the name of something external to ourselves. And so as we progress through these 4 layers, and the fourth layer is we stop outsourcing our self-esteem and self-worth to others. And now that we've done the work to start to clear out the garden of the weeds, there's room to now start instilling a relationship, an authentic relationship with ourselves, and to deepen that authentic relationship that we established at the 3rd layer with a power greater than ourselves. And what's so interesting about this, and then I'll stop because I know I'm laying down a lot for you.
It's a lot.
And this has
good,
been my own experience over the last year, which has been transformative for me. I did a podcast episode recently about how I've been asking for a personal relationship with God. Because I didn't grow up in a family where there was spirituality, or my dad was Jewish, my mom was Christian. We did all the events, but we never went to church or temple. Mm-hmm. I thought I was an atheist in college, and I've been wanting that relationship with a power greater than myself, and it's come out in a journaling process I've been doing every morning where I write to God, and I write out all of the things I'm grateful for, and it's very different than a gratitude list because I've gotten clear now that I've cleared out enough of my garden. It's like I'm getting above personal growth. I don't want to be, I told my clients this the other day, I don't want to be a gardener the rest of my life. I don't want to be weeding my limiting beliefs. And what happens as you get through personal development 1.0, which is an important part of the process, all the things we're talking about, your head pops up above the weeds, and then all of a sudden you see your higher power. And now there's a craving to have a relationship with your higher power. And I think a lot of people are craving a relationship with their mom or dad that they were never supposed to have with their biological parents, but they were supposed to have with their divine father or mother. And so now
interesting.
I'm less and less now that I'm working on these 4 layers, and it's a practice, like you said.
Yeah.
I'm realizing that that's not even a conversation that makes sense to me anymore. Like whether I'm as good as Tony Robbins or not as good as Tony Robbins doesn't make sense anymore. All that starts to make sense is what is God's will for me. Mm-hmm. And so there's an elevation of the conversation out of the weeds.
Yeah.
And I think that's where so many of us are heading. I think that's why so many of us are in pain right now, is because we're being called to a relationship with ourselves, a relationship with each other, and a relationship with the power greater than ourselves. And as entrepreneurs, we're called to that through the desire to have a successful business and make more impact and all these things. But it's like even God knows, what's the old adage? Like, sell them what they want, but give them what they need.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great way to point out the way that God does that. Right.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, man, you've shared so many things here, and we could go really deep on some of this, and I feel like there's some very practical things you've laid out here. And I just wanted to kind of highlight a couple of the very practical things as people are listening. And then I want you to be able to give people a place where they can go to learn more if they want to go deeper on this. But I think that, the pointing out that these limiting beliefs we have really are a choice. And that when we stop and slow it down and notice that when we hold on to that choice, hold on to that belief, how do we feel? How's that working for us? But your three columns on the page I really love, because I've talked a lot to people about just loose up, turn around the thought. And even if you can't do a 180 on the thought, even if you can loosen it up a little bit, you can create some space to have a more productive thought that works for you. But you gave us in the column number 3 a way to actually help our rational mind see, look, we know this thought isn't true because of A, B, or C, coming up with ways that we can see, oh yeah. And I think that column 3, I've never talked to people about that. That really struck me when you shared it, because it's one thing to say, okay, I identified a thought that's not working for me. Is it true? My ego wants to yell, yes, it's true. Of course, you idiot. But if we really slow it down, we can see it's not quite true. We can loosen it up just a little bit, even if we can't do a 180. But you added the part of bring evidence that we have for ourselves. What evidence do we see that that's not true? And then when we slow that down, we can by the way, I've done this sort of as part of my process without really calling it out and doing the 3rd column, as you've said, because you start to, as you practice this, you start to go, oh yeah, duh, I can see blah, blah, blah. But when you actually go through the process of writing it out on a list, I think that is going to be a really practical thing for our listeners to go, look, just work on this, loosen up the thought, help yourself see it's not true. Anytime the key thing that opens that up is, as you said, it's not just, hey, the belief is a choice, but it's also, if it doesn't feel good, if it's got a negative charge to it, it's not true.
And that's an easier thing to track in a binary model, right? Versus what am I thinking? It's, do I feel good? Do I feel bad?
Yeah.
Exactly. So thank you for the practical thoughts there. And then the way that you went through limiting, the 4 layers of it. I really appreciate you calling out resentment, and then your point about the core that tends to control us, and it gets so calcified that it's just we start to believe it's the way we are. And some people go down a path and say, well, a leopard can't change its turn spots into stripes, or whatever that saying is. Well, fortunately, we're people, and we can change, and we can do things differently. We don't have to say it's going to be that way just because it's been the core and the way we've operated till we're 55 or whatever. So I love the wisdom that you've shared with us here. Clearly, you can go as deep on this as anybody. There's so many things I'd love to go deeper on. When I read Joe Dispenza's stuff, and particularly the Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, there were so many things in there that I've kind of grabbed onto and practiced in different ways, and I can see that you have a method that combines a lot of different practices. And I would love for our people who are interested to be able to go, learn more and go deeper. So where can they go, David, to get a little bit more into your world and what you teach?
Yeah, thank you for all of that, by the way, Clayton. I appreciate it. There's 2 good resources that come to mind. One is I published my first book last year, which is called A Changed Mind. And so A Changed Mind is available on Amazon. It's a great manual for everything that we're talking about here. And then I have a podcast by the same name. You mentioned it earlier. It's really taken off this year. We've got about 1 million listeners a month, and I publish 2 episodes a week. It's also called A Changed Mind. It's on Spotify, iTunes. It's also on YouTube. And so there's great resources for people to check us out. And then if they want to go deeper, there are ways there to do that.
David, I appreciate it so much. I love entrepreneurship, as everybody listening here knows, but I love its ability to help us become our best selves. And if this life is about nothing else other than changing and becoming better, I think that's the heart of it. And so I appreciate your podcast name of A Changed Mind and your book of A Changed Mind. And for our listeners out there, I would encourage you to, if this has sparked some interest and some intrigue, or if it's gotten you fired up about some of the things we've talked about here, I'd encourage you to follow David Bayer on his and get into his podcast, A Changed Mind, get his book, A Changed Mind, and let's keep practicing entrepreneurship in a way that helps us become our best selves.
Thank you, Clayton. Appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you, David, and thanks everybody for joining us on this episode of the Conquer the Chaos podcast. Until next time, get out there and keep growing.
Thanks so much for listening. Subscribe right here on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app to make sure that you don't miss a single episode of the Conquer the Chaos podcast. And hey, if you like this episode, let's get this out to more entrepreneurs. We all know that it is not easy to grow a great business and a great life. And so let's get this message out to others. Make sure that you hit the like button, that you comment, and that you share it with others so that we can help other entrepreneurs build a great business and a great life as they conquer the chaos. Keep going, keep serving, and keep growing.